So thank you so much for joining the meeting today, this webcast by Dianne Post that's brought to you by Secular Communities for Arizona. And we're cooperating with HSGP, Humanist Society of Greater Phoenix, to provide information to all the secular constituents around the state of Arizona so that they can be aware of what's been going on, even in this times of limited contact with each other. Last week we presented, well, the week before last, we presented from Secular Coalition, Tori Roberg, who is our Director of Government Affairs, and Tori essentially presented the legislative program. I should just mention real quickly that the legislators have decided twice now to end the session and not to end the session. So they continue to be wrapped in indecision as to whether or not they should proceed. And one of the reasons they want to go on is because there's lots of things that they haven't acted on that are pet projects of theirs. Most of those are projects that the secular community is not enamored of. So we would prefer that they end the session now. And I think if the coronavirus situation stays as it is for another week or two, that they probably will indeed decide to pull the plug, but more on that later. Today's update is actually from the legal director of Secular Communities, Dianne Post. Diane has been legal director now for, are you in your fourth year or third year, Diane? It's your fourth year.
Fourth, I think, yeah.
Fourth year, yes. Diane got her training at the University of Wisconsin, and she was a family lawyer in Arizona for 18 years in private practice and represented a lot of people in the marginalized community throughout her career, starting with the family law issues with battered women and so on. But along the way, she got into a substantial amount of international law, the problems that exist in the U.S. with regard to these issues exist throughout the world. And so Diane has gotten quite a background in as diverse places as Algeria and Zimbabwe and Mongolia and Cambodia and Kenya and many places that I haven't been to. And Diane has been there, leaving her imprint and doing work, as I say, mostly in behalf of communities of people who are marginalized. So I know that even here now, Diane is actively involved with Uncage and Reunite and several other causes, progressive causes that get her attention. And she is extremely generous with her time. And we at Secular Communities have been the beneficiaries of that now in our fourth year. So Diane is going to report to you today on the legal activities that she has been involved with regard to Secular Communities. And this will only probably be a partial report because I know that she's done a lot of stuff that she doesn't have time to talk about. So let me not take more of her time and let her get on with her report. And please, all of you, join me in welcoming Diane. She's a great asset to our cause.
And as I understand it, people should put their questions in the chat box, and then Zenaido will moderate them when I'm finished, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I'm going to give you a very short report of what we've been doing in the several, now I went too fast, several years before just statistics. And then I'll move into some cases we're working on today. And you'll have a lot of fun because some of these things are really pretty funny. So this is 2017 when we really got going in this. And you can see, of course, the main problems remain in public schools and state agencies because of the separation of church and state. We really focus on those things because that's really where the problems lie and what we need to look at. And when I say two towns, I'm talking about, again, a violation of separation of church and state in some particular town. And the employment discrimination, which I've had a couple of those, where the employer is attempting to force their beliefs onto the employee, and we'll see a recent example of that. 2018, we just had one more case, but again, schools led the way with problems there, and then state agencies, the city, and discrimination almost the same as the previous year. But this year, 2019, things went wild. We had more than double the number of cases, and you'll see schools leapt up, but that's because we did a public records request of every district in the state, so that we didn't get answers from every district in the state, but of the ones we did get, then I went through everything and we found where there were existing problems, and I'll talk to you about some of those. It's unbelievable, some of them. So that's why schools went up so much in this year, and then the government also jumped up in 2019. Some of those cases was, as some of you may have seen in our Facebook post, the ethics complaint about John Kavanaugh, who mocked Athena Salmon after she had done a secular prayer. And this is not the first time he's done something like that, which of course went nowhere because the ethics rules in the House, they don't have to report anything that they do if they ever do anything. The Department of Correction was not allowing inmates to wear certain religious headgear if they were of certain religions, namely Muslim. And Access was paying transport to religious self-help groups like AA, but not to non-religious self-help groups. So we got that resolved, and they put out a new procedure, and they now would pay to go to non-religious groups. This is a problem I'm going to talk more about later as well, because this kind of behavior continued with Ducey putting out this Easter post of a very religious nature. We wrote him a letter at the time, as did some of the national organizations, and got no response whatsoever from him. I don't know if you can see this plate. Oh, I think you can. It looks pretty clear that the plate says Satan hating. And a woman had sent me 2 or 3 of these photos that she'd seen this car around in her neighborhood. I filed a complaint with the Department of Corrections, no, not the Department of Transportation. There is a set of rules under the procurement guidelines of how you're supposed to determine whether a personalized plate is obnoxious or not, and whether you can actually put that on a plate. And I argue that this violated the rules because you're not supposed to denigrate a religion. Well, they absolutely would not credit that Satanic Temple was a religion, even though the IRS gives it the tax break. So we didn't resolve it, but we didn't also go forward with any further complaint. Some other government ones were the state library, which put an ad for religious materials in their monthly newsletter, and someone objected to that, and they cleared that up right away and put an ad in the next month for secular materials. One of the ongoing cases from last year is All the King's Horses, which is a children's ranch. And it's a group home for children who they can't fit or find a space for in foster homes, and put them in a congregate facility, which they're basically not doing anymore, but they were doing it at this time. So towards the end of last year, they stopped, and beginning of this year, they stopped even sending kids there because they didn't have enough kids to send there. And the contract was to expire on March 31st, 2020. So we thought, great, contract's expiring, the issue's over, not to bother. Well, then the state turned around without any RFP, without any application, nothing, went ahead and extended the contract for a year, failed to follow the proper procurement procedures in extending that contract. So I filed a procurement complaint, administrative complaint, on April 7th. They had 21 days to respond. They did not. So I then went to the next level, which is to file a complaint with the director. They have until the end of May to respond, and we'll see if they do or not. If they do not, then the next step is that I can go to court to complain about it. And this is the ranch that I'm talking about. This is where these kids were held. I happened to be in Sierra Vista, and Benson is 5 miles from Sierra Vista. So I went there. Well, everybody in town knows this place exists. They just don't know where it is. So it took me a while to find it, and eventually I found I had to stop at this other place and ask and blah, blah. But I finally found it, and this is the road. You can see what it says? Private road, no outlet, enter at your own risk. I saw that and I thought, you know, these are people that have guns. So I don't know how safe I'm going to be driving down this road. And it went along a railroad track, and there were huge trains everywhere, and it was terrible. So I finally get to the place, and here's the entrance. Now, if you're a child who is in care, does this make you feel good when you come up to this entrance into this place? mean, scared the bejesus out of me, I'll tell you that. So when you go in, you see what they spend some of our state taxpayer dollars for. 85% of the money that they get is from state taxpayer dollars through this program from the Department of Child Safety, putting children into this group home. They had 3 homes, one for delinquent boys, one for delinquent girls, and one for pregnant girls. So this is their playground, and then of course the huge cross and the flag. And on the right there, next under that tree, there's a picnic table and a fire pit. So presumably they had barbecues and things out there. Now, this one was sent to us by, we don't know who, someone who works in the city, obviously. And this was an activity that the city of Phoenix was inviting people to come and pray with the police, united in Christ. Probably some of you know who this is at the apex of this V here, and that is the chief of police, Jerry Williams. That is her. And these other people behind her are also actual police officers. And you'll notice that this event was going to be held in the city council building, the lower council chambers. And there's no mention here of who is sponsoring this, if anybody. I mean, it looks like it's sponsored by the city, which of course it cannot be. So Steve Benedetto, a lawyer on our legal list, jumped on it right away and sent him a letter and said, you know, cancel this thing right now. If I don't hear by 5 o'clock and such a thing, I'm filing a federal court. Well, they canceled it. And this was the next event. They'd still held it, but it was later. And they're honest in that it's being sponsored by Hillsong Church. It's moved to a church as opposed to in a city building. And it's now pray for the police as to pray with the police. And no actual police officers are in it. So it still took place, but it didn't have all the imprimatur of a city event on it. Now, notice the chaplain down there. He is the paid City of Phoenix chaplain, paid for by tax dollars. That is still the same guy on this ad. So the next one is some schools that we've dealt with. Camp Verde, this is an ongoing issue as well. The school board voted in December 4-0 to hold a Bible study class, which would be an elective for high school students. And students were to sign up this spring, which never happened because the school closed down. However, under Arizona law, you can have a class on religion, on the Bible, you can, but it has to be done under certain very strict parameters. And the curriculum that this school board chose was the National Curriculum for Public School Bible Studies, which is a national group trying to get Bible studies into schools all over the country. They have been sued twice and lost twice, and it is really a terrible curriculum. I have a copy of it. I'm reading it. It's what I learned when I went to Bible school when I was about 7 or 8 years old. And much of it is wrong, even from then. So it's really bad. So we've been working very hard to try to get that to be stopped. And it's sort of in limbo because we don't know about the class, if it's actually going to happen because they didn't sign up kids for the fall. So we're not really sure what's exactly happening. We've got a couple of op-eds published on the local newspaper. We got some local people working with this, so we'll see. The Mingus Union was the same pastor from Cottonwood who went to the Mingus Union. He went around to every school board in the Verde Valley area, asking him to hold this class. And in that one, they changed the people who were on the school board, and the new school board president said no, he didn't like it. The other one was for it, this one's against it. It was over. Saguaro Elementary, they were having a good news club in the elementary school run by parents and religious people, which cannot be approved under the Equal Access Act of the federal statute, and so that was resolved and ended. And Glendale Union, we had the same sort of a problem with Christian Fellowship of Christian Athletes and the Young Life, run by the pastors and run by the religious people, is supposed to be run by the children according to the federal law. We resolved that. Now, this was an advertisement that somebody in Cave Creek sent us, and you can see that our awesome neighbors, which was a church, the Scottsdale Bible Church, free event, everybody come, blah, blah, blah. So I complained about this, and they got a law firm that responded and said, well, we didn't do anything wrong. We think this is perfectly fine. We're just telling them about community events. Well, this was their next ad. So this was some months later that the same Scottsdale Bible Church is putting on a fall festival, but you'll see the ad is quite a bit changed. And they put a disclaimer down here: Cave Creek Unified School District neither endorses nor sponsors this event, blah, blah, blah. So they still did it, but they did it with a disclaimer and did it in a different fashion, which they can get away with. Now, I know you can't read all of this, but this is really quite a funny one. A guy up in Winslow sent me this, and this is a town crier that comes out once a week, local paper, and this little part up here that's got the parentheses and the underline says that this is put together by high school students as part of their service learning. That's the big thing these days, right? High school kids doing service learning, that this was put together by them. Well, obviously, this is not okay. And the square down here on the bottom left where I have the asterisk and the black line around it, that is a message from a local pastor, a Catholic priest. That's him writing a very religious message there. And again, I know you can't read all of this, but the two pictures of the two women, they are both obituaries. Now, who puts obituaries in your high school newspaper? I mean, I worked on our high school newspaper, and we certainly did not put obituaries in our high school newspaper. But both of these women's obituaries are extremely religious and focus on Jesus and prayer and the Bible and all of that. And down at the bottom, right in the middle, again, where I have a little asterisk, that is advertising an upcoming religious event. So we had a lot of toing and froing with the Winslow Unified School District, who didn't have a principal and didn't have a superintendent, and it was pretty wild. And eventually, the guy up in Winslow sent me this advertisement, this heading, which says, as of May 1st, the town crier is no longer affiliated with the Winslow Unified School District. Yes. So while they never responded to me, they did at least stop their illegal behavior. These are some more schools. We had a Gilbert School, elementary school, teaching Christianity as if it was settled history, which we know it's not. And you are not allowed to teach the Bible or Christianity as settled history or geography or anything else. In Prescott, they were, when we just resolved this just recently, supporting a Good News Club. They were treating the Good News Clubs and an adult prayer group differently than they were treating other school groups and other adult groups that wanted to use the school. Well, we had a discussion about that, and that's been resolved. And in Yuma, this was a pretty funny one too. When we looked at the public records request that we got back, we never would have known this, and the director, the new superintendent, didn't know it either. But the only way we found out about the praying in class was that a substitute teacher came one day. And she walked into class, and this was all in the emails that I got, and I had to read through all these emails to find this, what went on. She came to class one day, a substitute teacher to teach, walked in the class, and here was the guy who was the class president leading a prayer to the class. And she said, well, you can't do that. And he said, oh yeah, Mrs. whatever her name was, the new teacher said, you know, she just started this. Yeah, we started this semester. We pray every day when we start the class. And the substitute teacher said, no, you cannot do this. So after the class was over, she then sent an email, the substitute teacher sent an email to the principal of the school. And they behaved very decently. I mean, they said, no, you can't do that. Yes, we'll talk to her, blah, 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 blah. And then it happened again. So that woman doesn't teach there anymore. And the new superintendent, when she came in, was appalled at what was going on there. There's been a total revamp of policies and training and everything else. So hopefully that's resolved. Now, this one in Canyon Elementary, under the federal law, the Equal Access Act, you can have these clubs in the school from 6th grade on, but they have to be initiated, organized, and run by the students, not the parents, not an outside group. Well, they had a Good News Club, which is the religious club, in 1st to 4th grade. Does anybody know any kids who are in the 1st through the 4th grade who are capable of initiating, organizing, and running a club? No. The answer is no. So clearly, and you could tell by the documents that I had that this was organized and was run by the adults. So we had a little discussion with that school, which is stopped it. Marana, I'm telling you, some of this stuff you can't even believe it. This was another incredibly religious place where they were doing all kinds of illegal things, you know, supporting religious clubs and religious athletes and the pastors coming in and just all kinds of stuff. One of the clubs they had was called Esther's Court. Now, and it is spelled the way I have it there. It's not a typo. So I'd never heard of this. I thought, well, what is Esther's Court? So I looked it up, and Esther's Court is a group of single adult women who meet to support each other and discuss God's divine plan for their marriage and how they can find a husband to meet God's divine plan for their marriage. They had this in elementary school for girls. So Gilead, we're here. You think it's happening in the future? No, it's already happening. So this took a while to get resolved, but it did. And the attorney agreed that none of this was legal, and we resolved it. All right, now this one, I have to show you a bunch of pictures because this is really going to get a big kick out of this. I got a report from the handmaids who were there protesting, and some of whom went inside and took the photos you're going to see, about a Trump rally going on at a church in Mesa. So I got that. All right, so we went in and they were holding a political rally. So I spoke to the pastor who said he attended this and that they had done nothing wrong because only he, his wife, and the AV person attended it. In other words, nobody from his church. So what, right? But that doesn't matter because the churches aren't supposed to have it. Whether anybody attends it or not is not the point. But he assured me that Jan Brewer was not there. Well, there's Jan Brewer right in the middle of that photo, quite clearly. He assured me Donald Trump was not there. Well, he's not there, but that is him standing there behind with his thumb up, the woman who has the big Trump sash on, and they're standing right in front of the Republican Party of Arizona sign. Now, allegedly, this was an event to register voters. Now, any of you who have ever registered voters, you know that the law requires that when you register voters, you cannot be partisan. You cannot indicate that you're with either party, and you have to register everybody who comes. So this was a violation right off of the bat. Then the pastor said Kelly Ward was not there. Well, that's Kelly Ward. And you see that she's in front of a big screen that says Trump and Trump victory. Very obviously a partisan rally. He then said he didn't see any Trump signs. He doesn't know what I'm talking about because he didn't see any signs. Well, you can see them right here, plain as day. The huge one straight ahead and then one on the right where you can just see the TR. And whoever it is speaking, still behind her is the screen that has the Trump logo and rally on there, as we saw behind Kelly Ward. The next one, he said, well, then he later changed his mind and said, well, Jan Brewer was only there for a few minutes in the morning. She didn't stay. Well, here's another picture, and there's Jan Brewer. She's sitting towards the front, just to the left of the middle in that white outfit, and you can just see the back of her with her blonde hair. And that is very definitely Jan Brewer, and she is very definitely there. So this was how this event was advertised as a voter registration event, Women for Trump 2020. That is not a voter registration event. Now it says Women for Trump voter registration training. It's still, you can't be partisan when you do it. You can't mention a candidate when you do it according to state law. So this is the content, but also this was a national day of Women for Trump. It wasn't just Arizona. These events occurred all around the country. Let me go back. So we went back and forth, me and this pastor, and finally he wrote me and he said, well, we didn't do anything wrong, but if you want to report us to the IRS, here's their address. Which I thought was pretty funny because, of course, I already had their address, and yes, I did report them to the IRS. And I will never know what happened because the IRS will not tell you if they ever did anything, but if they go after the church and if they take away their tax exempt status and if they charge them taxes, we would actually get 10% of that. So sometime if a check shows up from the IRS, we know where it came from. All right, so that's, now we're up to 2020. So far we've got 10 cases, and the Litchfield case where they had a Facebook post asking for religious partners, that was resolved quite easily actually. The Dysart case is still going on, and I wrote them in February and they just got a hold of their attorney. and the attorneys got a hold of me, and now she won't even call me back. So we're having a bit of a difficulty getting this Dysart thing resolved. The hospice was an interesting thing. It was a hospice in Lakeside, up by Pine Top and Sholo. And what they were doing was they never go in. Actually, they work from their homes, but they called and then they had to go to the hospice places. They had hospice at home. So they were going, social workers and nurses were going to the home of the people who were in hospice. But they all had to call in at 8 o'clock in the morning and have this mandatory employee meeting. Well, they started the meeting with Bible verses, Christian prayer, thought of the day, that kind of thing. Well, the thought of the day always was some biblical stories, some Bible verses, and always a Christian prayer. And this was mandatory. So a lot of the employees did not want to have to listen to this, but they had no choice. Sometimes the prayers went on for 2 minutes. Sometimes they went on for 10 minutes. So you never knew when you could call in and miss this proselytizing. So again, they refused to respond. I went to their national office. They refused to respond. And one of these fabulous guys that I met at the secular day at the Capitol is a researcher guy, and he found the lawyer for the hedge fund that purchased the healthcare place. And I went to that lawyer, and within 1 hour of sending an email to that lawyer, the other lawyer called me. So it definitely helps to know who to talk to. So it took a while to resolve this, but then they sent me, well, here was their policy. And well, our thought of the day is at the end of the meeting. So we're sorry the employees are confused. I said, the employees are not confused. I have something like 60 recordings of 60 different meetings. At every one, the prayer's at the beginning of the meeting. So it's your staff who's confused. They did have a policy that said the thought of the day was at the end of the meeting. So finally they did change it. So now they warn them. They say, okay, we're done with the meeting today. So those of you who need to go to work, you can go now. And for those who would like to stay for the thought of the day, we'll go on with that. So that's what they're doing. But I'm still having to follow in case there's retaliation against those who are hanging up, which is a good number of them. Then the last thing is, well, not the last thing, but is the Ducey religious messages again. Here's his Ash Wednesday message. Obviously, he didn't respond last year. So here's his Ash Wednesday message. He started early. This was out in February, so he already was starting. This is a Palm Sunday message that he put out. Again, very religious and obviously Christian, that sort of thing. And then here's his Easter one, both a secular Easter one and then 2 religious Easter ones. And he does not put out these kinds of messages for other events like Eid or Hanukkah or any other religion that there is. He doesn't put out those kind of messages, only Christian messages for Christian churches. So once again, he's ignoring us. So we are thinking that we're going to have to sue him on this because clearly he's not listening. So we've also started a public records request on 18 schools. Again, someone that I met at the Secular Day at the Capitol who wanted to do research. She found 18 schools who have Fellowship of Christian Athletes and sent out public records requests to all of them. Wonderfully, one of the principals called me and he said, I'm really concerned about this. I just became principal here. What can I do about this? So, I mean, sometimes they're there for you. So we're working on that right now. So what's new this year in our legal program is we've written several editorials and we're sending one out a month and trying to get them placed around the state. So if you're a writer and you want to send us an editorial, please do. We're also gathering secular invocations so that legislators, when they get the opportunity to give an invocation, will have handy right there, a secular invocation that they can use. So if you have one or you want to write one, please send it to us. And that is my presentation. And now I will be happy to answer questions. Zanato, you're
muted.
Muted.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really had no idea there were so many of these things, and I was appalled and stunned by some of this that happened. So this was very enlightening for me, and I'm really thankful and happy that you're so on top of these. And
well, I'm
wow.
sure there's a lot else going on, particularly in the rural schools that we don't know about. But some of these schools were quite wealthy ones, like Canyon Elementary was up in the foothills in Tucson. So we're not talking poor school there. Marana was the whole district. Yuma was the whole district. So nobody's been watching. Nobody is watching. We also need to get out to our liaise people. You need to pay attention what's happening in your schools. Whether you have kids in there or teachers or talk to the, you need to pay attention to this because we can't be there. You're there. Let us know what's happening.
Diane, I know you've, as a part of this project, you send out a lot of correspondence seeking information from the school districts around the state. That's probably one of them calling you right now.
I'm trying to shut it off.
Anyway.
I don't seem to know how to do it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Can you give us a bit of an idea on the responses that you got back? What proportion of them were compliant and helped happily so? And what proportion of them did you really educate? And what proportion were intransigent?
About 70% were compliant. I found no constitutional violations. So it was about 30% that were not. And of that 30%, the majority, once they saw what was going on and they gave it to their attorneys, the majority of them complied. And there are some school districts that have the same attorney, 4 or 5 school districts have the same attorney, and she just went, oh yeah, fine, and these things were taken care of. But there's always a few recalcitrants. But like I said, about 30% had separation of church and state problems. And of those 30%, I would say probably only maybe 20% of them I have to fight with. But notice we did not get answers from every school district. There were 300, and I think we only got about 100.
Are you planning any follow-up correspondence with those that have not responded?
Well, it depends on how much time Tori's got, because she and Eric are the ones that sent it out.
Okay. Let me just make one observation while we're waiting and see if other people can.
Roxanne raised her hand.
Who did?
Roxanne.
Okay, I'm sorry, Roxanne. Go ahead.
Okay.
You got the floor.
I'm just curious. Is there no penalty when Ducey continues to flagrantly violate this policy, or?
Well, that's why we have to sue him. I mean, there's a penalty only if he's sued and the court says he's wrong. But he has no fear. I mean, he doesn't think we're going to do it. So he just goes on about his way. But yes, that's the idea, is we need to sue him, and then there will be a penalty, and then he'll need to stop. But he's gotten letters from the national organizations. He's gotten letters from us, and he just continues.
Seems like there should be something that we could do without a lawsuit all the time.
Well, we've been trying, but
Flagrant.
it hasn't succeeded.
Yeah.
Well, we could unelect him.
Yay!
That we could do.
We could.
We could get a new governor, yeah.
Well, when you see how the National Justice Department sets such a fine example for all the state,
Oh, yeah.
you can understand why we have such a tough time getting people to comply. What I was going to mention earlier, for everyone, Diane has great relationships with all the national organizations, and even the local ones, ACLU, the AHA, Americans United for Separation of State, Freedom from Religion Foundation, American Atheists, and so on. The national organizations all have substantial legal resources to do research and to actually file and pursue lawsuits in a way that we cannot, at least not too many of them, do locally. But the value that we have by having an organization like Secular Coalition and Secular Communities on the ground here in Arizona, these national organizations can't afford to parachute people here for every complaint. But when you have someone like Dianne Post and Secular Coalition essentially chasing after the local fences and the local issues, local complaints, they're a lot more prone to support those local efforts if they have someone on the ground doing some of the local spade work.
Yeah.
And Diane's work even extends to forming pro bono relationships with some of the local law firms who are willing to help in some of these lawsuits. So we're really fortunate to have Dianne and now a growing team of lawyers, both on the board of Secular Coalition, Secular Communities, and also affiliated with us in pursuit of some of these lawsuits. Do you want to say more about that, Dianne?
In a minute, but Tori has her hand up.
Okay, Tori. Unmute, Tori.
You know, I actually raised my hand a little bit ago just on Roxanne's question about what we could do. And I was just going to echo that it is really frustrating that we just continue to get ignored. And so I don't think that my question is relevant any longer, but that was really, I was just going to echo it and just say how much we really value our legal team and Diane and all the work that she does, because you know, the only other things we can do is get media attention until we get a lawsuit. And unfortunately, we are going to have to go the lawsuit route because we just keep getting ignored. So that was all. Thank you.
What I wanted to say was I really took one for the team because I joined the religious liberty section of the state bar, which is 99 Christian lawyers and me and 2 Jewish, 1 man, 1 woman. That's it. Oh, and the one satanic temple, he joined finally. So there's 4 of us, and we joined to try to keep our eye on him, you know. And then I got on the planning committee. Well, the first year they did their seminar, it was just hideous. And me and several other lawyers filed complaints with the state bar about how biased it was. So it didn't go anywhere. So the next year, I put myself on the planning committee. Y'all owe me big for this, okay? Y'all owe me big for this. So we fought for, I don't know, 6 months. And then that seminar was a lot better. It still wasn't perfect, but it was a lot better in that other voices were heard and lawyers with other opinions spoke, and it was a lot better. The 3rd year, they called me to be a speaker, which I really got a kick out of. Okay, fine, I'm gonna now speak at your thing. But I did. So I can tell you that they're very, very busy. And some of them have whole departments in big law firms that are devoted to religion and making sure that theocracy overcomes democracy. So we had better be watching, be careful, be on it, because they have resources that we cannot dream of. And Alliance Defending Freedom, of course. They're in Scottsdale. And they have, I think, a $6 million budget for the year, right? For Arizona, just for Scottsdale. But it's huge.
It's 52 million total.
Nationwide?
Yeah, nationwide 52 million, yes.
Yeah. So we're up against some really big guns, and we just got a little pea shooter here.
I just wanted to mention to Tori, we can't underestimate the impact that we can have with bringing public attention to issues like this. In fact, it was Ducey himself a day or 2 ago who reversed his decision to not have the state universities modeling teams essentially model the coronavirus impact on the state, and basing decisions on some secret formula that he got from Washington, probably the White House. Yeah. And several people, including Roxanne's former boss, Mr. Humble, were on national TV essentially bringing attention to this, and he reversed his decision. And he wouldn't have done it, I promise you, if it hadn't been for the glare of public publicity. So that works sometimes, and I know, Tori, you're not an amateur at doing that. So we have to keep all the arrows in the quiver and use them all when we can, when they may be effective.
Luke has his hand up.
Okay, Luke.
Yeah, I was going to say to Roxanne's question, public opinion is always a part of it alongside of the lawsuits, and the two are not separate, because when you bring a lawsuit, it creates media publicity. And I think to your question, it's not just a matter of we have to sue every district that violates this. We have to sue the governor every time there's a separate violation. Sometimes we have to show we have the resources and the guts to take on the governor and take him to the Ninth Circuit if we have to. And the schools will know that we're not just barking, that we'll bite.
Right.
And I think there will be a disproportionate impact from one battle as long as it's well chosen strategically.
Okay, anybody else have questions? Okay, well, thank you all for tuning in. And let me just remind you that next week, there's a presentation, the regular HSGP Sunday presentation. It takes place at 10 o'clock in the morning, same kind of format. And their presentation is going to be by Matt Long. I believe he's a Mesa attorney, if I'm not mistaken. I've met Matt. The Psychedelic Revolution, part of the HSGP Sunday Speaker Series. The Psychedelic Revolution. That's the title, right?
Yes, that's the title.
Okay, got it.
And if any of you want to volunteer your skills, I will find something for you to do. Do not fear. So contact me.
Well, that's part of your legal program, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't mean for them to clean my house.
Yeah, well, I mentioned the Psychedelic Revolution. I wasn't sure what you were alluding to, Diane.
Well, I was there for that too.
And 2 weeks from now, at the same time slot that Diane filled so impressively today, we're going to have a presentation. The one we've got scheduled right now is by Freedom from Religion Foundation, somebody from the national organization. As of today, we do not have a commitment on who is going to speak. So I need to get together with Tori and probably also with Lindsay to see if we can get a plan B just in case they're not available. They apparently have some difficulty. I think you may have gotten wind of this, Ron. I think I copied you on some of this. They have some issues with the format we're using, the Zoom format. So we've got to get to the bottom of that. But if we possibly can, we will get someone from FFRF to address us in 2 weeks' time. We'll get the word out and put it up on the Secular Coalition website, Secular AZ. At AOL, I mean, no, it's, what is it, Tori? It's secularaz.org.
Secularaz.org, yeah.
Secularaz.org.
And
right.
it's in our weekly emails and everything also. So
right.
if you're on our email list, you'll get, well, no, that you have to be a member, so.
We'll get the word out.
Lindsay put it in the chat right there.
On the connection. Yeah, there it is. That's is that the one for, okay, that's the one for 2 weeks from now, right?
Upcoming and past.
Yeah, but the one for next week has got a different call-in number, a different link. And that is also, however, on the Secular Coalition page. So if you go there, you can get the link to Matt Long's presentation. If you want to relive those thrilling days of yesteryear with the psychedelic revolution.
Well, he's actually talking about current medicine, current scientific research, and current studies that are underway.
Good. I'm sure it'll be informative. Every HSGP presentation provides a unique learning opportunity that I think it would do us and our constituent organizations around the state to tune into. So thank you so much for that, Ron, and thank you again, Dianne Post, and thank you all for tuning in, and I hope we can see you regularly here on these webcasts.